Welcome to the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcast, please follow, hit the like button, or any subscribes. It really helps us with the algorithms. Santa Cruz Coffee Break is produced by the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. All opinions are those of the speakers. We invite you to join us on the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF for more fun. Now, let's get on with this installment of Santa Cruz Coffee Break. We'd like to welcome everybody to the 77th podcast of the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. And again, every time we seem to find the track something, we seem to take the truck into the ditch. And today we're going into the ditch big time with the people that, with Roberto-Venn, School of Luthiery, who probably have produced more great guitars as a result of their work. So we have Bart and William Eaton. So welcome, guys. We're really honored to have you here. What fun.
Thanks, Richard and Tad. It's an honor to be with you guys.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Our pleasure. So we should probably start by saying, what made you guys decide to open a Luthiery school?
Oh, well, I guess I should answer that question because we go way back. We started in 1975.
Wow.
I built a guitar with John Roberts in 1971. John was a pilot for a lumber company down in Nicaragua, and he was an executive pilot. He was flying his management team around the jungles to locate wood harvests and do all kinds of things. And it's quite a tale. And John became really good friends with the owner, Charlie Robinson Lumber Company. And a few years go by, and John has this wild scheme. He meets a boat builder from Belize, Honduras, and they decide they're going to make a yacht. So it's going to be made out of rosewood and mahogany. And John's familiar with the wood because at the Robinson Lumber Company, he gets to know all about woods. So, and he's good friends with the Mosquito natives of the area, indigenous people. And he commissions them to go into the jungles and do some hand cutting with trees he's observed and found in his flights. And these are trees, by the way, that are huge trees, but the lumber company wants everything above the trunk and below the canopy for the straight grain and the ease of milling it. So what's left over in the jungle is these big stumps and some canopy material. And so they're instructed and they know where to go, and they go into the jungle, and they on a big mahogany tree, they'll cut down the roots for the root line. They'll dig trenches on each side of the root. They'll cut underneath the root and have a big, what they called a gamba. It's a big slab of wood. And they would tie bamboo to that with vines and float it down the Coco River right near Puerto Cabezas, and with a drop point. And so John, he sends in a team, and they're gone for like 5 weeks. He thinks they're lost. I'm going to send another team in. This happens 3 or 4 times. By the time the first team comes out and starts delivering this wood, they create this pile. This pile of wood becomes huge. During several months' time, John's friend, the boat builder, goes back to Honduras. He's out of the project. John's got all this wood. What do I do with it? His wife's having eye problems. They decide, John and Dottie, John Roberts decides to ship the wood to Phoenix, Arizona, where his mother lives. And so with Charlie's help, they put a bunch of wood on this boat to New Orleans, put it on 3 boxcar loads. And you know how big a boxcar is. So a huge amount of wood. It gets delivered to Phoenix. John offloads it, moves it to his house that he acquires in Phoenix over on Harvard Street. The backyard is like 3 stories of this wood. The neighbors are thinking, what? Where'd all this wood come from? John eventually moves a few years over to Washington Street, finds this old Quonset hut, kind of a mystical looking place. That's the first place I met him. And he's got this pile of wood in the back, and he starts an import hardwood business. Doesn't have great success with it, but he meets a couple guitar makers in Phoenix. Carl Samuels was one of them, and they teach John how to make a guitar. They said, you got perfect guitar making. So John becomes a guitar maker. Carl says, all these young kids that are in college and they're looking for stuff to do, and this is, late 60s, and says, they'll want to learn how to make a guitar. So John opens up his shop. He calls it Juan Roberto Guitar Works. And that's how I met John in 1971. I was looking for a guitar, but couldn't find one. And this guy was going door to door selling his handmade guitar. He made it Juan Roberto Guitar Works. And I thought, I got to go there and see if they got a better guitar because I'm going to buy one. I get there and John says, "Oh, you're here to make a guitar." And I said, "No, I just want to look." But I went home that night and I said, I should make a guitar. When will I have a chance like this in my lifetime? So I signed up. I built a guitar in 4 months and finished it. And I think it started in October, finished it in February, March in 72. I thought it was a one-off opportunity. I leave the scene. John continues to work on it. A few years later, I go to Stanford to go to the business school there, get an MBA. Thought I was headed to be an investment banker. My second year, I had a business course, new enterprise management, with assignment to write a business plan. And prior to that assignment, I had this wild dream about making a second guitar. Woke up and about 4 or 5 in the morning, drew it on paper, called John Roberts the next day. "John, I've got 3 weeks coming up. I want to come down and build this guitar." And then I get this assignment. I put 2 and 2 together. I said, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to write a business plan on starting a guitar making school. So I go down to Phoenix. I build this 12-string guitar. I gather all the information. I write a business plan. By this time, Roberto-Venn comes into the picture, 1973. He was there actually when I went to make the second guitar. And he and John were kind of partners. Bob makes electric guitars. John specialized in acoustics, so it was a great partnership. And I wrote that all up in the business plan, sent it to them. This was the spring of 75. And they said, "Yeah, let's do it." So we took Juan Roberto Guitar Works, kind of a casual thing, and kind of upped it a little bit, upgraded, and started the Roberto-Venn School of Luthiery. So it's really John Roberts and Roberto-Venn. They're a generation ahead of me, and I out of reverence to them and respect, I didn't put my name on it. Plus, Roberto-Venn Eaton be kind of a long name for a school. But so I was in there from the start, but it was really John Roberts, that story about coming, this wood that comes up from the jungles. And so that's how the school starts in 1975. Bart has an interesting story as well, because he's been with the school over 20 years now. So, but that's the origin story of the school. And I've been involved since 1975 as an owner, manager, director in some capacity all these years, 49 years now. Next year is our 50th anniversary.
Wow. Wow. Any of that mahogany left?
Yeah, that was my question.
There's the story. Should I tell them about this, Bart, or do you want to tell them?
Oh, you should tell this one, but just a funny side note to the Juan Roberto thing. John, I actually ended up working with John for a few years, helping him. He had an exotic bird collection on the premises of one of our previous locations. So I kind of helped him out with that, helped him feed the birds, got to know him pretty well, but he had quite a sense of humor. So early on, the story I've heard is that he figured all good guitar makers, all reputable guitar makers were Spanish. So in his labels, he put "Magnificent Sound" by Juan Roberto. So that's where the John Roberts turned into Juan Roberto. And then, so that's where we get the Roberto and Roberto-Venn. So that's a good John Roberts anecdote.
Don Juan Roberto.
Yes.
And it's all the Castaneda stuff that's going on at that time too. And wow. I mean, what an amazing set of circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of tales. We might tell a few, but I mean, it's, when you think about the likelihood of something like that happen, to bring this wood up, it's incredible. And so Chad was asking about, do we have that mahogany left? So it's mahogany and rosewood, by the way, Nicaraguan rosewood. So last year, we're sitting around thinking what to do for the 50th anniversary. And I won't tell you the long story, but what got initiated is this project. We still have some of that wood left. It's out back. It traveled with us from Washington Street to South 16th Street, and we use some of it now and then. Last 20 or 30 years, we've hardly used any of it. But in the move to where we're at now on Grand Avenue, we had to make a decision. Should we bring this wood with us? And some of the staff said, no, just leave it here. It's no good. It's all cracked. So no, let's take it with us. And which was not an easy thing, forklifts and trucks, but we brought it all over the school. So last year I thought, let's cut into one of these boards. What I imagined happening, Richard and Tad, was like, we're gonna give some of this to our elite graduates. They're gonna make guitars that have a lot of ribs, like you think of your acoustic guitars, like Santa Cruz guitars. Most of them are book matched, open up, 2-piece backs. Occasionally you'll see 3-piece backs. I was thinking we're gonna give this wood out and they're gonna have to make 10-piece backs, because of all the cracks and stuff, right? So, but I thought, why not? Just for the sentimentality of making something 50 years later with this wood that came up from the jungle. And so I go out and pick out a board. We haul it over to the resaw, the baker saw. It's a 10-foot plank. We cut through it, open it up. To our amazement, there was a few micro cracks, but it's pretty clean. Some reason I had an intuition about this one board. And to this day, it's been one of the best boards we've cut. We've cut a lot of it now. But so then we decide, hey, we might have some really good wood in here. So what we're doing for the 50th is we're gifting some of this historic Nicaraguan rosewood and mahogany and a few other varieties to all of our elite graduates, some of the best builders in the world, to all the major companies. We've got Gibson on board and every one of these people are going to build a 50th anniversary guitar out of this historic wood. So we've got Gibson making a Les Pauls. They're going to make 2 of them at their shop in Nashville. That's headed up, by the way, by Sergio, who's their head of manufacturing, but also Mike Volz, who was vice president of Gibson. He's one of our graduates, worked for them for, I think, over 30 years. We've got Austin Hadlock. He's one of their chief engineers. We've got Doug Culberson, who they call their master luthier at Gibson, one of our graduates. So 3 of our graduates are heading up that project. We've got Bob Taylor on board. I met Bob in 1976 in his garage. He had, Kurt was there, and he had one other employee. I think his second employee was one of our graduates, Will Harris. And they're literally in a small garage making handmade guitars, Taylor guitars. Who could have ever predicted, that Bob would be one of the most influential luthiers of our era, for sure. And did a panel. Bob was on a panel with me at the NAMM show last spring. And so he's heading up their project. Talked to Paul Reed Smith. They're making one. Collings Guitars. I got to know Bill Collings a little bit, visited their shop a few times. Amazing builder. Collings Guitars are great. And so their head of manufacturing now is one of our graduates, Steve Nall. Of course, Bill passed away, 3 or 4 years ago. And so Steve Nall is heading up that project. So Collings will have it one on. Actually, Gibson's acoustic facility up in Bozeman, their chief guy for quality control is one of our graduates, Joel Unrein. So you just go down, all the companies that are building on Fender, their custom shop, one of their elite custom shop guys, been there over 20 years, is one of our graduates. And so they're making a George Harrison Rosewood Telecaster. I don't know if you remember, but those came out, famous from George Harrison. I think they made 50 of them or something. But it's really a fun project, and our goal is to get 50. But we're kind of being selective with who's making them. But everyone is pretty much connected with a school. If they're with a company, it's because we've got long-term relationships with the company. Richard Hoover, a good friend, Santa Cruz Guitars, called up Richard and he says, absolutely, we'll be part of that. And so they're making one. We're really honored to have Santa Cruz Guitars on board with that. Rick Turner was a close friend and came and lectured at our school. And of course, Rick passed away, 2 years now, a year and a half?
Yeah, 2.
Yeah, 2. And but Zach, one of our graduates, is heading up Turner Guitars. So they're going to do, I think it's the Model 1. They're doing his kind of classic one, the one that Lindsey Buckingham plays. They're doing a guitar for the 50th anniversary. So you just go down the line, and it's really, we're really excited about it. So.
It's such a really great idea. You know, when Richard Hoover did these vault guitars this year, you know, if you got a chance to see him at NAMM, they were ethereal.
Yeah.
You know, they were truly works of art.
Yeah.
And we just had a really interesting podcast with John Thomas, the guy that wrote Kalamazoo Gals, and he talked about the Buddy Holly project. You know, and these projects, they're really great because they bring this community.
Yeah.
They bring visibility to this community that normally it's just Guitar Center, grab it, go, you know.
Well, listening to all that, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but in the back of my head, I'm getting this kind of conspiracy Illuminati kind of thing saying, wait a minute, they got people everywhere. It's like this hidden network in the background of every guitar shop and repair shop and everything else. And it's pretty amazing. How many people, do you know how many have graduated from your program total?
It's close to 3,000 or over.
Wow.
And, you know, one statistic I'm interested in, I think if you look throughout time, like during the Renaissance, you had the guilds and people would make guitars, and a lot of individual guitar makers were produced. These days, if you're an individual guitar maker, you learned on your own, or perhaps you went to a school. And I think we probably, if you define a guitar maker by somebody who makes the guitar from scratch on their own, I think we've probably produced more guitar makers than anybody in history.
Yeah.
I can't think of another place that has 3,000 plus. Now, how many of those are actually active custom builders? Well, not 3,000. A lot of them have gone into repair. A lot of them work for companies. So they are scattered throughout, but we're probably in the realm of 1 to 2 degrees separation from any guitar you find on a shelf. The chances that one of our graduates touched it is pretty good because, you know, all the main companies have employees. I saw Chris Martin a few weeks ago. He was here at the MIM in Phoenix, and we've chatted a few times this past year. And we do have to do some more work with Martin guitars to get them more graduates. You know, in the early years when we did placement, tried to place graduates with Martin. In Nazareth, Pennsylvania, it's a company town. So the answer really was, well, no, we get our workforce from Nazareth, Pennsylvania. This is family, relatives, but they have opened up a bit. And that's what Chris and I talked about. I said, we'd love to get more graduates working for you. So we're, you know, that's on target to try to work with them more. Cause you know, they're arguably the most famous acoustic guitar company in the world, oldest in 1834, I think. C.F. Martin made his first guitar, so that history goes way back. But any other company, you know, when I talk with the head of every company, you know, whether it's Bob Taylor, Paul Reed Smith, Sergio at Gibson, or you know, you go down the list of the major companies, and they jumped on board in a minute. They didn't even hesitate. And they all put that project on our graduates. You know, when I was at Collings visiting for the first time, I had a concert there at the One World Theater in Austin, beautiful venue, and I spent a day with Bill Collings over there, and I told Bill, I said, I want to get a photo of all the graduates, and I called demo. That's what we do at the school here. I said demo, and more than half the workforce came out in the back with me to take a photo. And I realized the numbers, you know, and Bill was very appreciative and complimentary, as Steve McCrary is. Steve and Bill are, you know, just real close partners all these years. Saw Steve just a few weeks ago. You know, our good friend Frank Ford passed away.
Yeah, really,
Frank, and we got
really
a
sad
special for Frank just a few weeks ago, and Richard was there. Got to talk with Richard, and a lot of the locals up there, but it is a close community. You know, these stories about the Kalamazoo experiences there and all these things that, you know, when you get to talk with guitar makers, it's a pretty small community. You know, you know, kind of in some ways, almost everybody knows everybody else.
Well,
But
I was going to say, assuming that we were young people and we were interested in building guitars, what does it take to get into the school? Are you looking for a certain level of experience or background, or can anybody just kind of sign up and give it a try?
Well, I can answer this one. Yeah, I mean, it's not required that you have a previous woodworking experience. It doesn't hurt, but I was a student here in 1993, and I think my extent of woodworking was middle school wood shop, and I think we made a wooden tic-tac-toe board. I still have it. I actually found it a few years back, and I have it in my office. So when we give tours, sometimes I'll show people as an example. But I was a bass player, and I knew I wanted to make instruments for years. So, once you find out there's a school for it, it was, pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, so we get students of all skill sets. We have students who have come here who have already made guitars. Some of them already have started guitar making businesses, and they're just trying to get better. And then we get students who have zero woodworking experience. It's interesting, given tours, we get students of all ages too. Some are right out of high school. Some are, kind of at retirement age, trying to do something new, start a new chapter. And what people learn is much more than just guitar making. It's mechanical aptitude, it's confidence. There's so much more to it. But it's very sequential. It's very step by step. We start very rudimentary. Then the first day of class, we'll jump right into woodworking, and students are making neck blocks and tail blocks for acoustics. So you're learning fundamentals. You're learning how to square up wood, how to use your tools, and then it just kind of expands from there. So yeah, there's not a lot of experience required. High school graduation or equivalent is the minimum requirement, really. So, but yeah, it's pretty wild that the quality of the instruments that come out for these students doing it for their first time. And, they have a lot of instructor guidance, but our instructors by no means are building the instruments for them. And we don't use a lot of pre-made parts. It's just all done, it's all raw materials and hands-on guitar making.
That's awesome. When you say raw materials, I mean, are you teaching them how to resaw sides and backs and doing all that stuff?
Those machines, you can have a whole other class on just milling and milling it. So we have a lot of, milled lumber. We do have a baker resaw, so we'll do a lot of resawing here. But we'll have a lot of back and side sets already pre-cut. And the reality is a lot of guitar makers will go out and buy, back and side sets. They'll buy body blanks, they'll buy top blanks. So a lot of things are already milled, but they're not to final dimension. They'll have to they use some more manual thickness sanders, all the shaping. So yeah, they're still doing all the hands-on, but we do all the resaw and milling work.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the real intimidating part in the old days of getting started in guitar building was, you had to be able to resaw rosewood if you wanted to build a rosewood guitar. Nowadays, you can order everything almost to final dimension, which makes it so much easier for a lot of people.
Yeah, it gets you close enough for sure. Yeah, we still have the original saw so John Roberts also was a butcher at one point. So we here, which was what all the resawing was done on until we picked up the baker about 15 years ago. But that butcher boy's still here and is still functional. So yeah, that was like just whatever you can get your hands on to cut to resaw is what you had to do.
That's amazing.
You're talking about 1975 and stuff. That, from what we see, that's about the beginning of the boutique market, in builders. I mean, it was John Gurian and, there was a few people that were in front of that, but Richard kind of talks about 74, 73, 74, 75 being the beginning of it. And it's where it's grown to now. Heresy out of my mouth, but I really think we're in the golden age of guitar making right now. I just the things that are coming off. I had a 64 Martin that was a complete dud, and it was never going to be anything but a dud, and we accepted stuff because that was all we could get. As players, that was all we could get our hands on. And now, the the lexicon of choices is just enormous. I mean, and a lot of pretty good guitars.
Yeah, and the quality is it's pretty amazing. And in that higher level, that upper echelon of builders that are building these instruments that are, 20,000 minimum, and they have no problem having people line up, the collectors. We have a lot of our graduates in that category, and it's just amazing the work they do. It's something else.
Well, you offer more than just guitar building classes, right? Don't you offer shorter sessions, longer sessions, kind of things?
Yeah, our main kind of flagship program that has been kind of at the start of it all is the guitar making and repair program. We do have a couple of shorter 10-week repair programs, a repair and an advanced repair, that we really just focus on the repair aspect, so they get a lot of repetition, a lot of what the bread and butter work would be. And so those two classes are also accredited. But we do have a lot of weekend, evening avocational courses. We have a pickup winding class that is taught by Rob Timmons of Arcane Pickups. He's one of our graduates. He'll fly in and teach that class. We have a French polish class. We have an amplifier building course.
Wow.
And we've had a few.
I want to throw in another name drop though, so Jason Lawler Pickups, you probably heard of that. So
Yeah.
Jason is one of our graduates. And we started that course with Jason. Now Rob is doing it, but both of those graduates have done an amazing job. I mean, Lawler Pickups have quite the reputation now. I mean, talking to Bill Collins, Collins was very discriminate about materials, workmanship, one of the finest craftsmen of our era. And it was always such an honor for us that Jason was supplying them with a lot of their pickups and all kinds of other people. So didn't mean to part, but I wanted to name drop another graduate out there.
I was about to name drop that, but I just because when we started the class, it was with Jason, and he taught it for many years. He just got to be he was just super busy, and it was a lot for him to come out for a week. And
well, I have a set of Arcanes, and they're absolutely fabulous. I mean, they're never leaving. They're never leaving. So that's
It starts with Bob Venn, by the way. So when we started the school, you couldn't buy pickups. You could scavenge pickups out old guitars. You might find something, but when you think you talk about Richard in the era, golden era, and I think that timing is about right. I remember, I don't know if it was 77, 78. We had a Guild of American Luthiers hosted quite the Luthiers convention at the Fine Arts Palace in San Francisco. And you guys know about that venue up there. It's kind of a classic thing. I mean, kind of the columns, and it's kind of a beautiful facility in San Francisco. And a lot of people showed up in that. And I can go down the list that people showed. Richard, that's where I met Richard Hoover. And I could see right off this person is a true artist. I have so impressed with Richard from the beginning all the way up to the present. Santa Cruz guitars are just fantastic. And he in some ways he's like one of those founding people of what it takes to make an elite guitar. Because we have graduates, Michi Matsuda, look at his work. Jason Costal,
crazy.
Ray Kraut, Michael Bernick. You go down the list of some of our graduates, as Bart said, they're starting, maybe 20,000. I think Jason made one for Paul McCartney that might have been, I don't know what the price, I think he sold guitars upwards of $60,000. But that back in that era, parts and materials was a different story, So Bob was our electric guy, and we wound our own pickups shop. That's what you did. You came to school. Now every one of us learned to wind pickups. So Jason was part of that lineage. When Rob comes along, he got interested, and I don't, Bart, you could probably help me out on this. I don't think we were winding pickups when Rob came through, but he got interested on his own and just took it to another level. But Jason actually learned to wind pickups at the school, as did most of our graduates from about 75 till up, I would say mid 80s, approximately in there. But those
I really
guys like Seymour Duncan and Bill Lawrence and Rick Turner was really into electronics, and Bob Wolfstein, and so many other really great pickup guys. Well, you mentioned Lloyd Baggs, Larry Fishman. All these people are, I remember talking to all these guys when they just started, and it was just a handful of people that were the pickup guys. And but so they all grew up in the same era. Some reason, the bug hit, so many people in the late 60s, early 70s. It really started to flourish.
You know what I think is truly amazing, and I spent 20 years in photo education, and I love all the outreach that you do for these people, because I saw a whole bunch of photo schools that take a whole bunch of kids' money and just shove them out the door and say, go get a job, and in fact, a couple we've seen in the past 10 years, a couple of these really large factory photo schools basically be forced to close because they were promising that 75% of our graduates go on to the photo industry, and it was like 12%. It was really ridiculous how low it was. And it sounds like you guys are a ticket to, I don't want to say a ticket to a job, but you're out there working with the people that the people need that are going to work for or going to become, who they become.
We're a nationally accredited school, by the way. We're accredited by Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges, ACCSC. And actually, we're going through our 9th cycle. Every 5 years, we do a renewal process. Their main criterion is our placement. So we have to be pretty disciplined about trying to help students get a job. We don't guarantee job placement. We state that right up front. But over the years, it's grown because as we've had some successes with graduates as entrepreneurs, but also as employees, every class will have some company visit, some H&R person. When JC took over the helm at Gibson, he was so influential, and what he's done for that company is truly incredible. I don't know if you've interviewed him, but he'd be interesting guy to see how do you grow a company from 330 million in 4 years to 990 million. I mean, this is a guy who took Gibson big places and continues to do so. But he sent out his H&R person and Linda Lesperance, and that was a real sign for us because we have some connection with all these companies, and I think the first or second class they hired 6 people out of our student body.
Smart guy.
We've had a few in recent years. Of course, the whole trek of the industry. Ever since COVID, things have grown tremendously, and I just read a report the other day. Guitar sales are supposed to hit somewhere around 19 billion between now and a couple of years. From 17 billion guitars. That's a lot of guitars out there.
Yeah.
And so when you break that down, it means a lot of jobs for the industry, which is great for us. Still there's not many places you can learn how to make instruments, but we don't take it for granted. We can't guarantee job placement. Some has to do with the student's willingness to travel somewhere. And these days, one of the biggest questions is, can they afford the housing to start with? Because these are not lucrative jobs to start with. So if you move to Nashville or Santa Cruz, there's a great example. What's the cost of living in Santa Cruz? If you take a gig with Richard, Santa Cruz Guitars, you've got to figure out, how do I make this work the first year, 2 years, 3 years? And then it proves to be a good gig. Richard has been such a gift to so many people. But one of his greatest gifts to our graduates is they'll go to work for Richard and hopefully give him many years of productivity. But we have a series of graduates that work for Richard and then go off on their own and start their own companies. And, I kind of joke with Richard about it, but, he's aware of it. He's in his best scenario. I think, the balance is, will they give him a lot of great work for a number of years? And I think, I don't know the interview process, but I'm sure that's part of it. But people like Scott Walker, Scott, probably hand carved over 1,000 necks for Richard and became a foreman of his shop. Now look up Scott Walker. He'd be an interesting guy to interview for this program. His electric, amazing, really beautiful, really, really aesthetically interesting. And but that's
electronically,
with each of these employers, that where do graduates go from there? So
yeah, no, it's interesting. You have a unique perspective on this that I think it would be interesting to hear what you have to say. I know that when I was younger and I wanted to build guitars, which I never did, the goal was to become this solo luthier, an artisan working in a small shop. And a few people are able to make it that way. But what's happened is we've seen a lot of these smaller multi-luthier shops that, do very high-end work. What do you feel is the options for people who want to get started in guitar building these days? Do you think there's still an opportunity for the solo luthier, or do you think that the small custom shop is really the growth potential in the years ahead?
Bart, why don't you start on this one? I'll follow
up. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely opportunity, as far as the path for our graduates. And it's something we tell them too, that the best way to do it is to start with somebody, and ideally a smaller custom shop. You get a lot more hands-on. You're going to get a lot more learning opportunity, a little more opportunity to kind of cycle around the shop and try all the different jobs and learn how the business works. A lot of our students, if you did a show of hands, they want to start their own business and be that solo luthier, be your own boss. That's kind of the dream. Maybe even someday be the next Fender, Gibson, whatever it is. But the reality of just jumping into that straight out of the gate is that's kind of a daunting task, if you don't have any business experience, if you don't have any life experience. So that, that's the preferred path, is to go work for somebody else. And a lot of people will do that, and then they'll find out that that's where they belong. Like, the Steve Knoll example, he's one of the head guys over there at Collings now, and I don't see him going anywhere. But then, the Scott Walker is the other story. You go work for another business for a while and you start your own small shop. And it seems like there's definitely a market for the boutique instruments. But we do have, there's the other side of it. Connor Baldacci Guitars, one of our graduates from a few years back. When he was a student, I don't even think he was 21. I can't recall, but he just jumped right into. What's that? How old was he?
Yeah, Connor was right out of high school. Yeah.
Yeah, he came here right out of high school, and then he just jumped into his business, and he's just been really motivated, and he's making a go of it. I don't know what his production levels are up to, but it's kind of all over the map, but I feel like that there's definitely a marketplace if you can build the instrument and get it in front of people's eyes,
Yeah, that's amazing.
My follow-up would be, Bart really hits the main points in here. But you think how big the guitar industry is. Think of all the suppliers. Where does materials come from? The hardware, the electronics. You just go down the list. You can look at a guitar and pick out all the different things that go into a guitar, and there's jobs related to all of those. So if you look at our graduate placement, we have people in all those fields. We have certainly all of the small and large and medium-sized guitar making companies, but a lot of entrepreneurs, and we really haven't talked about repair. We've got a lot of graduates that go and just become repair techs. Guitar Center, probably their biggest hire is from us, and they've made some trips over here, and we've had conversations with them and ways to try to help them, because on any given day, they usually have a lot of openings, because they do hire people with no experience, and they come on board and they've got hub techs, whether that will help a new employee. But they've been, I think, in some ways appreciative that we can give them an employee that at least has a pretty good, start. Although we will say that, 5 months of training is a good start. It's a good foundation, but whether it's repair or become an employee, or, you consider yourself trainable. Consider that you have a good foundation, and companies are looking for you because their alternative, hiring somebody off the street with no experience, you're going to be way ahead of that curve. but be humble, because in most cases, you will be trained for specific positions and you'll grow within a company. And if you become an entrepreneur, as Bart said, your best path is perhaps work for somebody. And we try to help them design their career path. If you have these ideas, well, you're suited to find a small custom builder or find an apprenticeship, something that will introduce you to smaller scale production ideas, jigs and fixtures, and how you'll take that information, that knowledge, to go on to the next steps. But I don't know proportional. I would say, probably the biggest proportion are that people become employees for various numbers of companies. And
what's really interesting is the PGA right now. I don't know if any of you are golf fans, but the PGA right now is got this big push for, if you love golf, come work for us, because there's all these different jobs. There's all these tech jobs in the trucks, and there's all these jobs at, and then if you're good at golf, maybe you'll be a tour pro. But they have a really interesting campaign, which is exactly what you're talking about, of come work for us, because if you love what you do, it doesn't really matter what you do. Within that, under that umbrella, you're working at the Masters. Whether you're driving a golf cart or you're teeing up a ball, you're part of that scene, that whole thing. And it's exactly, I can't imagine that there's somebody that comes to that school that doesn't love guitars or music.
I think it's a good analogy. It's like a lot of our students, they do start with that. They're passionate about guitars, and a lot of them play, and they think, could I be a professional musician? Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can make it with that. But we've had some really outstanding musicians. But one thing in common is, well, I want to be around guitars. And then the idea is, to build something with my hands. And this is, I think, the transformative experience that I get to witness, and Bart gets to witness on all of our instructors. Students come in, and especially the last 10, 20 years, where people have grown up with cell phones and computers. And now we have these alternative realities that we're looking into, and our little world is in this little frame in this digital world. And now they come and they're handling trees. This wood that they're seeing in the grain structure, they're looking into that instead of a cell phone. And they spend 5 months where they really in some ways become transformed, for the reason being that they spend this time in the present. So being here now is an important life's lesson. When you are in this moment right now, you're experiencing the miracle of awareness. You're experiencing the miracle of being alive, of seeing fascinating things in front of your eyes. It's an amazing phenomenon. So now these students go through this experience, and it changes their lives, and it's a wonderful thing. And when you think of working with trees too, this has a lot of metaphysical aspects to it, but certainly the DNA structure of human beings and trees is almost identical. We grow in symbiosis with trees that some people are aware of, some not, but just the basic thing of oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. The trees need us, we need trees more, and plant life. So these little things that are intricate within a biosphere, and the fragility of the biosphere, and the reciprocity of how we exist together becomes apparent, either consciously or unconsciously, where each of us get to see this journey in a different way. And I think that's probably one of my biggest appreciations of being involved in the school, is to see, what this has in store for these graduates. It's a pretty cool thing.
Well, I've got to imagine that the vocational experience, which I think so many kids these days get at all, since there are no shop classes in an awful lot of high schools. And if they are, they're maybe working with plywood and belt sanders. And to get a chance to work with real tools, with real materials, and create something that is both functional and beautiful, That's got to be a wonderful, wonderful awakening in young people too. So
Yeah, I kind of come
I,
thinking of,
yeah, the be there now thing is, you know, it's like when you see a dark room of 40 kids and they see a print come up for the first time, you know, in a tray developer, uh, surfing, be here now. If you don't, you're going to break your neck. You know, you got to pay attention to life around you, and that's so beautiful. Wow.
It's kind of a forced thing with the tools that we use. You know, you have to have your attention when you're using a bandsaw or sharp carving tools. You know, so that's the introduction right there. And then beyond that, you know, and we try to make them aware of that too, because the more attention you can put to that, starting with the process of envisioning what it is you're doing, and that's a fascinating human endeavor to envision something, see it in your mind's eye, put it onto paper, and do the design work. That's why we like to start from scratch. You know, they put their whole design scenario on paper, and many of them create their own designs, which we like to have that as a possibility. Some use classic archetypes designs for their electrics. For acoustic guitars, OM style, dreadnought. You know, we've done a few different body styles over the years. That's a little different animal because of bracing and some other things. But the electric guitar, there's a lot of freedom. Headstock design, bridge design. So it starts with that, you know, it starts with that vision process. But yeah, the sharpness of things helps to sharpen their awareness so they don't cut themselves.
well, so I'm noticing that behind you, you also have something more than just guitars. Do I see ukulele and I can't quite tell. Maybe that's something else you have behind you there. Do you teach other instruments, or do you allow students to experiment with other instruments?
well, our students, the student projects that they make one electric and one acoustic. We kind of have to keep the guardrails up, so to speak, keep people in some sort of same line, just so they can get the experience and learn the fundamentals. For the student guitar, the student acoustic, they can do an OM or a dreadnought, but they do get to design headstocks, they get to design bridges, pick guards, they have a lot of wood selection options, but we're not reinventing that wheel, you know, with the history of bracing. And so for that first student acoustic, you know, there's parameters. Same with the electric, they actually do their own design work, but the neck joints are all the same. But there are options. After we get about a quarter way into the program, students who are staying caught up and doing well can start additional instruments. At that level, if they can realize it on paper and draw it up and get it approved, then they can kind of do whatever they want. Yeah, there is a ukulele hanging behind me. I'm not even sure what that is. It might be a repair. Actually, my student guitar is hanging up behind me. I don't even know why this is up here, but we used to let students do 12 strings. This was from 1993. But that's
Wow.
He's off the deep end. So, but yeah, once our students get past a certain point with their, you know, their student project instruments, they can start additional things. I've seen somebody have a ukulele growing out of an acoustic guitar before. And William makes, you know, these one of a kind multi-stringed instruments. So there's been a lot of amazing things made here. And behind William, he's got a couple instruments. I can let him talk about those. Would not be student level stuff, but
No, that's what I was noticing.
yeah, the one you got the one behind. Well, I'll let you go ahead, William.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, through the years, all kinds of things have been built here. It's you know, beyond guitars. But Bart's right. Our student project instruments, we intentionally keep them in somewhat of a focus because of what their options are going to be when they graduate. So acoustic guitars. Years ago, when John started, we were doing Torres fan bracing steel string guitars. Who does that? You know, but that was what John was taught. That's what he built. We did that, gosh, up till probably 1990, 92, 93.
Would have been past.
He built an X brace.
Yeah, this 12 string I pulled up actually still has the fan bracing in it, so it would have been like 95 even that we were.
Okay. Yeah, it was. way past his prime.
Yes.
We kept trying to move John into a different direction because, our graduates aren't going to see fan brace steel string guitars. And so finally we moved into the contemporary world, and we've been doing X brace for a long time. But yeah, it's been a journey. I make one-of-a-kind stringed instruments. Some of them are guitar-like, harp guitars. I did a session yesterday with the students, kind of a history lecture that I kind of do a little bit of performance art along with it so they can see some different instruments. I've got a lyre that I built that's kind of historic, and it's my own design. A one-string, hunter singing bow, shaman's bow, to give them a wider perspective. Where does the world of strings come from? What was this hunter thinking when he was plucking on a bow? Oh, he puts that bow up against a hollow log, and oh, now it's amplified. Listen to the sound of this. Or listen to the sound of this one string thumping in a cave, in a place where the cave drawings are, because the cave drawings are there because of the acoustic nature of that cavity. And when you vocalize in that spot, the echo that comes back to you is like, what is that? The womb of Mother Earth is speaking back to us. Is that my voice? So these mysterious realms of tradition and from all of our indigenous world paths do culminate into some amazing evolution that becomes the guitar, most popular instrument in the world as we speak. A guitar per household. That's lots of guitars out there. And that in itself is kind of a metaphor, because what looks more human than a guitar? The shape of a guitar, very feminine, a waist, a lower bout, an upper bout, shoulders. A lot of metaphors about a guitar, the headstock, all these things. So it has its roots in who we are as human beings and how we express ourselves. When we think about the lyrics that have been expressed over the years, so much of that in our era, the singer-songwriters, the Beatles. You go back to, or Bill Haley's in Commerce. You go back to, so much of the work created through the last numbers of decades, 5 or 6 decades. A lot of that comes by the way of guitar. And this is one thing we really hope for in this 50th anniversary project is this wood comes from the jungles of the planet. And that's the respiration of how we exist, around the equator, these huge stands of amazing woods and trees that really give us an opportunity for this life that we have. We're looking for singer-songwriters that may express this with one of these 50th anniversary project instruments. If you're out there and you are a songwriter and you would like to write lyrics, we'd love to get one of these guitars in your hands so you can create something. Having a tactile experience with this wood, wood has its own volition. Wood speaks to us. Trees speak to us. The science that's coming out of this world of how trees and plants communicate themselves is really eye-opening. And, most of us have had this intuition for our whole lifetime. But now science is proving that out, that trees intricately communicate beyond our intelligence, beyond, we're starting to catch up a little bit, but only the aspect of in the imagination. Trees express, a life and a consciousness that's probably outside of our realm of really understanding. But the simple thing about it is that if we can learn or even have a sense of this communication, we can start to get more in touch with our own purpose of being and where we exist within the planet. And as we see climate change, as we see the world moving forward, this could only be beneficial. And the interesting thing about this, like we could learn from the Mosquito Indians or any indigenous culture, these cultures are steeped in the tradition of communicating with an intimate landscape right around themselves. And their language, the way they see things and perceive things was how we grew up as humanity. This last 100 years, Industrial Revolution and on, is more of an aberration, really, as who we are as humans. And I would like to think that making an instrument, making a guitar, making a stringed instrument, having an entrainment experience with that, getting into a bit of a trance, You know, you listen to a guitar and it takes you somewhere, whether it's a simple folk song or it's a rock and roll piece with a heavy beat rhythm behind it. The entrainment takes you on a journey. And where does that journey lead? It can open up your whole faculties to, again, a place that we have in this world, in this universe. So it's really open-ended to what the possibilities are.
Well, how inspirational, and certainly not what I expected for us to talk about today. We're honored by your time. Thank you both very much. That is wisdom. That is something to take with us, all of us, to take with us. How we are connected. A giant sequoia drinks 10,000 gallons of water a day. You know, we should each drink a gallon of water a day. But thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Really.
We will make sure to have links and options for people to connect with you regarding both your full-time classes as well as some of these other workshops that I think that maybe people of my vintage might have interest in maybe coming down and attending, because those sorts of things would be quite enlightening. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this. And you know, next time we're in a guitar shop, we're going to yell out demo and see how many people step
Yeah.
Really.
You could do it at Richard's shop, Santa Cruz.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Great.
I was going to try to go up tomorrow. I'll see what happens. I stand in the front office and yell demo. Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening. I know you're coming up against a bunch of deadlines and stuff that you have to do, so we'll let you go. But wow, thanks so much.
Thank you guys for having us on. Great.
Well,
yeah.
And hopefully we'll be back in touch once this 50th anniversary project gets underway. I think that would be a great thing to follow up.
Yeah, we'd love to follow up with that. And a couple singer-songwriters will send your way.
We have a few of those on the forum.
Yeah, there's a couple of those guys. A couple of those guys out there that play those guitars.
Guitar now, maybe they're a contender for their 50th project. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks a lot. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Be well.
We hope you enjoyed this installment of the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. For more music-related fun, please join the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF or santacruzguitarplayers.com. If you have any questions or possible podcast topics, please contact us. If you have a product or service that you feel would be of value to our listeners, please consider adding your support and keeping the coffee pot on. Contact us for more information. We ask that you hit the like, follow, bell, or bookmark buttons so we can keep you informed of upcoming podcast episodes. We hope you enjoyed Santa Cruz Coffee Break. Now it's time to go play your guitar.